It is the 8th of the 8th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes past 8, and that means, as always, there are very many F1 centric thread at which we need to pull. It is the Friday night show. F1 boy, Miami, Macon, Issa, Michael, Daniel, Sir John Perry, thou shalt put some respect on his name, and Benzi. We're going to get techier than techie things. There's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about the Monacali and F1's results, doing gangbuster things, going parabolic as per usual, by dint though this time of the F1 movie, apparently, even though we report 1 year in arrears. So too, we'll talk about the spread of F1 love over the course of countries as far as the F1 movie. In the third instance, we'll talk about Lauren Meckius talking about Maximilian Verstappen and what separates him from the rest. So too, we'll talk about Chris Harris, who did a brilliant expo with Maximilian Verstappen in support of his new engine collaborator that is Ford. And he's talked about it on the Chris Harris on Cars podcast, BTS settings behind the scenes, and it's God tier. Talks about what he was so impressed about Maximilian Verstappen. Talks about how his ability to get right on the limit straight away is what separates him from the rest. And so too talks about him feeling very parental, patriarchal over one Maximilian Verstappen and why the British media gets him so wrong. This is Chris Harris talking, one of the go-to motorsport journalists to have ever goated. So too, we'll talk about Sir Lewis Hamilton and his tequila. There was an announcement expected 8th of the 8th, smoky settings. People were saying that it was retirement. People were saying that Lewis Hamilton had enough. He hasn't had enough just yet, notwithstanding some of his comments in the world's press and media. Let's in the first instance talk about these numbers, because F1 numbers came out today and they are going gangbusters as per usual. Fan base sits at 826 million in 2024. 43% of these fans are the fabled 18 to 35 year old, the ones with money. 42% of the fan base are women now. This is a paradigm shift for Formula One. It's different. It is almost difficult to comprehend as an old grizzled F1 vat, grey of beard, how far we have come. Mama Cameron didn't want to watch Formula One back in the day, in the early 90s, when it was Damon and Nigel and Ayrton and Alan. You must be flipping joking, but with the advent of a Sir Lewis Hamilton and a Maximilian Verstappen and a Lando, things are ever so slightly freshened up, young and different and more mainstream. Nigel, bless him, as much as he was a fire-breathing dragon and a happy 72-year-old, happy 72nd birthday to the one that they call Nigel Mansell. But bless Nigel, he's never going to attract to Mama Cameron's eyes like a Sir Lewis Hamilton, right? Ergo, we are in a different era as far as Formula One is concerned. This article continues that the fan base was particularly engaged, added Stefano Domenicali, around the F1 movie on social media, and viewership trends of the race have also been up, with live viewership of races in the US up 7% season to date compared with last year, which is a surprise, I will have you know, because you know now that there are only two people that are going to win a race between now and the end of the season. Round 14 was Hungary. One of them is called Oscar Jack Piastri. The other is called Lando Norris. There will be no other victors unless Maximilian Verstappen can pull a rabbit out of the hat. The article continues about attention dollars being spent on F1, the sporting endeavour par excellence that it is. 12 of the past 40 F1 races have sold out. Ergo, attendance is doing one of these. They're making it sexier. There are paddock passes. There are things going on. There are concerts. Please see the British Grand Prix. And this is F1's gift now. This is what Liberty Media have done. No, there's no way you're going to attend an NFL game in North America and not have a halftime show. Same thing in basketball. Make it a show then. It's not everybody that turns up to a British Grand Prix with £10,000 worth or $10,000 to spend on paddock passes that only wants to see races. Make a family event out of it, therefore. And that's what Liberty Media are doing. And that's why revenue by dint of attention dollars is doing one of these. Does that mean that necessarily this will continue going into next year? Well, that's a different conversation altogether. Now, the F1 movie, again, is doing bits as far as attention dollars, is it not? Not dissimilar to 2021 Gangbusters season between the one that they call Max and the one that they call Sir Lewis, of course. But then, this feels a little bit different. Drive to Survive-esque almost, as far as how gargantuan the F1 movie's impact is 550 million US dollars at the box office. Brad Pitt, as long as he's been acting, has never done a film that's had gross income or that's grossed a similar amount or more even than 550. This is therefore Brad Pitt's highest grossing pick career to date. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what you will call box office. However, if you look at the spread of the F1 movie income at the box office, it's a bit techie, this, because you got, I should have put the bloody table on. I'll read through it because it's important. F1 movie income, 17 million in Australia, 175 million in the USA, 25 million in the UK, Mexico 19 million, 15 million in Germany, 12.4 million in Japan, 9 million in China, 7 million in India, 9.2 million in Spain. Those are your main growth markets. Now, we said North America already, 175 million. That, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. F1 is doing one of these, notwithstanding Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris monopolising the 2025 season, or at least H2 of it. It will get techie. And techie things. Lauren Mekies has come out and talked about one Maximilian Verstappen 4. So I'm saying him to be a 5-time champion. He said that there is a difference between him and the rest in his experience. And this is what it looks like. Having been around Maximilian Verstappen now, Lauren Mekies, now team principal of Oracle Red Bull Racing, had this to say, quote, "Suddenly you understand that's how you get such an unbelievable level. What I mean by that is that we know the on-track level and how unique that is as far as Max is concerned. And then suddenly you discover Max off-track and you discover a completely off-the-charts level of commitment, love for the sport, simplicity, and a direct approach to the good moments and the bad, stoicism settings. Nothing's ever as good or bad as it first seems." He continues, quote, "Suddenly it's very clear that the combination makes him untouchable and unique." Maximilian Verstappen, of course, we're talking about it. Lauren Mekies' words. There are a lot of fast drivers out there. It's an unbelievable combination to have that raw talent combined with the absolute love and commitment to the sport. Oh, the humanity. Is it glazed, Daniel? If it's true, these aren't my words. Ignore me. I'm not even going to talk about Maximilian Verstappen for the next 30 minutes or so. I will leave it. I will defer in this instance to the experts, the guys and girls around F1 aficionados who know infinitely more about the sport than me. Sometimes you've got to be humble enough to defer to expertise. Mention no names, Lauren Mekies and the likes of Chris Harris. You changed the thumb. I had to change the thumb, Sir John. We're talking about Chris Harris. And again, let me set the context. We're going to talk about Chris Harris because we need to. The context is this. Ford put out a video where they showed Chris Harris, one of the best, if not the best, motoring journalist, car guy, currently to write articles, to put a pen to paper. He spent some time with Maximilian Verstappen. They spent some time in some race cars, in an RS200 God tier rally car. So too, they jumped in the brand new Mustang, didn't they? With a view to pay homage and promote Ford as they embark on their brand new endeavour, collaboration with Red Bull Racing, building their power units for them. This was sponsorship, but it was viral. Very rarely did we get to see Maximilian Verstappen or any four-time champion ever sit down with another motoring journo and just have a chat. Talk about the secret sauce, as Chris Harris puts it. What does he do turning into the corner? Where is all of the lap time that he creates and access it? How does he optimize for his lap time? How does he manage the car on and around the limits of adhesion? What's he doing different to the other drivers? It's a God tier video, that, and I will link it in the description. We've spoken about it already. Chris Harris has his own podcast. It's called Chris Harris on Cars. The first one that he's done since then, obviously he was embargoed and couldn't talk about it. Since the video's come out and done 1 million plus views, Chris Harris has come out and had a chat about it. And this, Crackosaurus, is really, really important. British View, and then we will talk about the British View because Chris Harris talks about it. He says that the British-based media, not biased, based, that they've got Maximilian Verstappen all wrong. I just knew you were going to talk about EYDB, so it had to be done. Marie, I hope you're good. Nando, what's going on? Buenos dias, amigos. What's going on, Macon? But Cam is British and glazes backs every chance he gets. Is it glaze, Miami? If we're talking truth and honesty, it's becoming my shtick, commenting and thumbs. Let's go. I'm immature, says such a break. Go on, let me tell you about this then. Because this Chris Harris thing is techie. Your boy had to bring the receipts. This is important. In the first instant, Chris Harris is talking about the UK perspective on Max Verstappen. Lest we forget, in Britain, there is a stiff upper lip type mentality. Chin chin. After you, Claude. It's all sports and etiquette. It's almost like the whys and the hows supersede the whats. That if you do a Michael Schumacher in 1994 on Damon Hill, then that's no way to win. That isn't any way to win. You would rather lose gallantly than win in a skullduggerous matter. That for me summarises the way of the British culture, and emanating from that comes something called British bias. Now, I know some of you in the chat will be like, you know what, British bias is definitely a thing. I think it's more groupthink, but there is still a way that the British media like to go about their activities. And as far as their interaction with Maximilian Verstappen, there is criticism. There is an unashamed way that Max goes about his endeavours that British media simply will never adapt to, never be appeased by. That way will never endear Max to the British media. But I don't think Max Verstappen cares, because ultimately all he's there to do is win. Full stop. New paragraph. Roll the first clip, Cameron.
Tell you what it was like on the day. Most of it, I think, comes across in the film. Not that I've watched it. I don't watch the films that I'm in, which Manish finds really weird. Unless he forces me to watch them. The thing you need to know about Max Verstappen is that most people in the UK have got him wrong. And that's why I suppose I'm not proud of the film, but I think we've not done a job in repositioning how people think about him. That would be too cynical. What we've done is we've let you see who he is. And frankly, he's one of us. He's a very, very uncomplicated man who happens to have been born with a set of skills to drive a racing car in a manner that none of us can really understand. And even more bizarrely, he's actually aware of his talent, and he's able, I think, to express what he's doing. He chooses not to completely in that film, but that's all part of the fun of the film, isn't it? He's not going to give away the secret sauce.
He's one of us, says Chris Harris. Just a simple man, unspoilt by the glitz and glamour that so often comes with fame and superstardom of being a multiple time champion in Formula One. And is that not a paradox? A refreshing paradox, some say. Now, it depends on the lens through which you ingest your Formula One. Mama Cameron will say that Max is boring. I've got no time for him. What's he talking about this time? All of these V lines and geometric racing lines. That makes no sense to me. Handling, no mitigating for the rate at which the tyres deg. That's right over Mama Cameron's head. But for the grizzled F1 vets who've been watching since the early 90s, 80s or even 70s, this is gold. This is what we want. I cannot be bothered with all the other nonsense. I am here to watch F1. Chariots of fire settings. I want drivers to bloody drive. And this is what epitomises Max's showing alongside Chris Harris. He says that he's just a simple guy who wants to drive very fast cars. Very bloody fast. How refreshing is that in 2025? Chat, how refreshing is that? And in the next clip, Chris Harris talks about how quickly Maximilian Verstappen gets up to speed. Now, you recall Break F1 when I had him on, friend of the channel, former performance engineer of Maximilian Verstappen during his first race victory, Spain, I want to say 2018. He said that the gift of Maximilian Verstappen is that he knows where the grip is before he even gets to the turn. And so too, he gets right on the limit, right on the first turn of the very first lap. That's his spidey sense. That's his God tier feel. Again, we always talk about manipulating the car on and around the limits of adhesion. Well, he doesn't need to test it like a Lando. He knows full tank of fuel, turn one, wet conditions, Suzuka 2022, exactly how to overtake for a Charles Leclerc. And therein lies Maximilian Verstappen's gift. Don't believe me? Ignore what I'm saying. I'm a very noddy B-spec F1 mind, just ingesting the sport through those very B-spec noddy F1 eyes. Listen to Chris Harris though, because he's a god tier peddler himself, a god tier racer, and he was in the car with Max Verstappen. Let's see what he has to say, whether he confirms Break F1's initial assertions.
But I have to say, he was just super relaxed. He was a total joy to work with, and I sound like I'm being an absolute sycophant here, but I tell you, if he wasn't, I tell you he was a dickhead. But he really wasn't. He was everything people had told me he would be. The first lap out in the GTD was eye-opening. I reckon. How do I say this without sounding like a knob? My job for the last 25 years has been to get in things with very little experience of what they are on circuits I don't know and go quite quickly straight away, because I've normally got 3 laps to get it done. What he did out the box is quite a bit beyond what I can do. He just got in it and into the first braking zone. I think he was plus minus 1 meter at the maximum of what the car would do into that corner. I don't think there was any leeway, and that was the first corner we came to. So it's an absolute privilege to witness that level of skill that close up. I think it also reminded me that when people have judged Max, and he deserved to be judged at times, some of it was, close to the bone at the beginning, we forget 2 things. He was so young and he was so inexperienced. He hadn't graduated through years and years of racing. I'm not sure he really knew a lot of what you could and couldn't do in armed combat in a car. He was just given a Formula One car at an age where most people are trying to do their GCSEs and told to go out and fight. You forget, and he's effectively matured into young adulthood as a world champion in the full view of a very, very critical media.
Excuse me, Nicola, in the first instance, I think it was 2016 and not 2018. I stand corrected. Fact checked. Noel says, was it me, or when Max first came on the scene, wasn't the British press lauding this exceptional new talent, Martin Brundle especially? What happened? I think it was mixed, Noel, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I think it was mixed. I think there was a massive swathe of the British press and media that was giving Max his credit and his props for what he'd done in F3, for being an F1 prodigy, the son of Nostradamus Verstappen, who was once a very talented karter at the very least, if not very good F1 driver. I feel like the audience was split. That again, somebody said some said potential to be a GOAT, some said he's 17, he's far too young, this is dangerous. While it's techie, I'll have to go back and revisit it. But no, you're far too kind as always. No, Crackosaurus says, more like Group B, spec wide. Let's go. I don't hate it. OG Zilla says, being an F1 fan from across the pond, the only British view I get is from UCAM. Who cares about MSM a dying It's techie, this OG Zilla. And you know what? If we're going to talk about British buzz before I refer to the Chris Harris piece there, we'll talk about Lewis and this tequila stuff in a second. But Lewis Hamilton, going through the earliest portion of his career as a British driver of colour, I feel like he came foul worse than any other driver that I've ever seen of this thing that we call British bias. The British media hated him. Did you hear what Bernie Ecclestone said about Lewis Hamilton the other day? That he needs to be careful that he doesn't hurt himself or his legacy, that he doesn't do himself hurt. Bernie Ecclestone hates Sir Lewis, and that sentiment is echoed by the vast majority, or at least it was before Lewis became a 7-time champion. But when he was a 1-time champion, or even 2-time 2014 Abu Dhabi settings, British media hated them some Sir Lewis Hamilton. I'm telling you, it was techie-wise the British press against Max probably missed something. Well, I think there's a thing. If you race hard, this was Schumacher's story back in the day, right? There were no lengths to which Michael Schumacher wouldn't go. I too hated Schumacher in 1994 because of the Adelaide Damon Hill instance. And Maximilian Verstappen is cut from the very same cloth now. Tell me the extent to which Max will not go to get himself a race victory and a championship. I would argue none. Whereas British media, if you're talking Sterling Moss level settings, they would happily give up a victory at the altar of sports etiquette, chin, English gentleman settings. And that's where there will always be a friction between the British media and Maximilian Verstappen. A friction, by the way, that Chris Harris is trying to break through here. I'm going to re-listen to this piece because I want to react to it. Chris Harris is saying some god-tier level stuff here. Let's listen to it again.
But I have to say, he was just super relaxed. He was a total joy to work with. And I sound like I'm being an absolute sycophant here, but I tell you, if he wasn't, I tell you he was a dickhead. But he really wasn't. He was everything people had told me he would be. The first lap out in the GTD was eye-opening. I reckon, how do I say this without sounding like a knob? My job for the last 25 years has been to get in things with very little experience of what they are on circuits I don't know and go quite quickly straight away because I've normally got 3 laps to get it done. What he did out the box is quite a bit beyond what I can do. He just got in it and into the first braking zone. I think he was plus minus 1 meter at the maximum of what the car would do into that corner. I don't think there was any leeway. And that was the first corner we came to. So it's an absolute privilege to witness that level of skill that close up. I think it also reminded me that when people have judged Max, and he deserved to be judged at times, some of it was, close to the bone at the beginning, we forget 2 things. He was so young and he was so inexperienced. He hadn't graduated through years and years of racing. I'm not sure he really knew a lot of what you could and couldn't do in armed combat in a car. He was just given a Formula One car at an age where most people are trying to do their GCSEs and told to go out and fight. You forget. And he's effectively matured into young adulthood as a world champion in the full view of a very, very critical media.
I concur, sir. Chris Harris makes some points, and that's why they have the Max Verstappen rule today. That's why Kimi Antonelli last year, Italian Grand Prix at Monza, FP1, needed an exemption to jump in an F1 car at 17, because when Max Verstappen did it, they said that he was too young then, too fragile, that his emotional, soft, vulnerable underbelly would leave him potentially struggling, his career sacrificed at the altar of unfulfilled potential. That's what they said then, and that's why you've got to be 18 years old and be old enough to hold yourself a license in your country of birth if indeed now you want to be an F1 driver. True. Chris Harris, I want to reflect as well on this thing about him just jumping in the car. People say this all the bloody time, that his gift is his ability to just jump in the car and know where the limit is before he's even taken a turn. That's Chris Harris, case in point, saying he saw that in person. This isn't mythos, nor is it legend. The Max Verstappen has this innate ability that not too many drivers, F1 or otherwise, in history have had, to know where the grip is, where the limit of it is before he even gets to the corner. That's the levels that we're talking about here, chat. And Chris Harris confirms this. That Harris interview is fantastic. It wasn't bad, was it, Remco? Wasn't too bad. Again, if you like driving, then how can you not like that interview? How do I say this without being a knob? I bet Max is a super nice guy in real life. It's clear Kelly's daughter adores him. I think he's just a simple guy. Chris Harris keeps using the word simple now. I think he's very simple and streamlined, uncomplicated. And for some, depending on your lean as far as the way in which you like to consume your F1, for some, that's a breath of fresh air. In this very complicated world that we live in 2025, where geopolitics and it's this and it's that and it's too much. I just sometimes just want to watch some F1s, you know what I mean? Unencumbered, untrammeled by the complexities of the world in which we live. But then that's just me. F1 YouTube says Max is the most talented driver I've seen in 30 years. He's not a bad peddler. Do you know what I mean? At this stage, if you're gonna hate on him and not recognise it, you don't need to like him. You don't need to love or loathe him. But I think it's important, mention no names, Roman Reigns, to acknowledge him and who he is as an F1 peddler. And then in this next clip, Harris talks about the fact that because it's a Ford promotion, Chris Harris, go on, let me take a step back from the F1 wood to see the F1 trees. Chris Harris used to present the biggest TV show in the world as far as talking about cars. Top Gear, remember back in the day it was Clarkson and Hammond and James May, gangbuster numbers. They franchised it off to North America and Australia and etc. Top Gear was a humongous brand, and then all of a sudden they canned it. It was Freddie Flintoff. It was a big accident that could have taken Freddie Flintoff's life. No more Top Gear. Chris Harris You are now unemployed. Set up the YouTube channel, set up the podcast. This is Chris Harris on Cars. Got the big gig alongside Maximilian Verstappen with a view to promote Ford and the collaboration as of 2026 going forward between Max, Ford, Oracle, Red Bull Racing. However, the past couple of weeks, Chris Harris was embargoed. He couldn't talk about it, could he? Because it got a bit techie between Max and Oracle Red Bull Racing and Toto the boy who cried wolf. Lest we forget, some say that Max was this close to signing a contract with Mercedes and the boys and girls for Brackley and Brixworth as soon as 2026. That video promoting Ford alongside Max and alongside Chris Harris would have faded to black. We would have never seen it. It would have been left on the cutting room floor had Maximilian Verstappen signed that contract to race for Toto as of 2026. Chris Harris talks about that in this next clip. Please continue.
Or the year after, we'll see what happens. But it seems like he's staying where he is. Can you imagine how much I was shitting myself? We recorded that 2 months ago, and I thought, when I left, I thought, I think I've got something there that's not been seen before. And then a week later, Max in talks with Mercedes, and I thought,
yeah.
Jesus, they might. There was a point where it was squeaky bum, where it was like, this film's not going to be seen. I thought, oh, for fuck's sake. Do you know, cap the 2 years I've had? You stop presenting the world's biggest car show, you get to interview Max Verstappen, and they spike it because he moves to Mercedes.
Chris, very nearly. I mean, the racing gods, the F1 gods, were very nearly not smiling at him yet again. Top Gear, the biggest show in the world, canned. Freddie Flintoff accident, near fatal accident, and then Chris Harris gets the big job alongside Maximilian Verstappen. That very nearly gets scanned. Thank God indeed, Master of Geeks, that he didn't go to Mercedes so that we get to see this. Crackosaurus, as always, far too kind, out here gifting memberships. Listen, if you are now an elated pebbler, aka a member of the channel, get yourself over to the community tab, join the Discord, get yourself some sexy emojis, and have a look at the cheeky newsletter that will go out once a week or once every other week. Marie, I appreciate you. I aspire to be as simple as Max. Me too, to be fair, Crackosaurus. As simple and as focused. It gets techier though, because Chris Harris talks about getting almost patriarchal, protective of Maximilian Verstappen in this next clip. Please continue.
Parental towards him. He doesn't need it. Good God, can he look after himself? But I just imagined if that was my boy, how protective I would have been towards him. And Jos comes in for a lot of shit, but he basically sent his kid into the viper's nest at an age when most of us wouldn't trust them to go for one night out on the piss in their local town. And look what he's achieved. I think it's remarkable. So on a human level, he was a joy. It's definitely a high watermark for me in my life. I view myself absolutely as a motoring journalist. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm a motoring journalist. And I think the best thing anyone can do, be they a specialist motorsport writer or just a car journalist like me, a hack, is to meet the incumbent superpower driver, spend some time with them, and maybe record a piece of media, be it written, audio or video, that you can maybe show your grandchildren and say, look, I've got recorded the day I spent with the best driver on the planet. And I'm hugely thankful to be given the opportunity to do that. And I hope people enjoyed the film. And I hope that this disappointing UK view of Max changes a bit, because what he does behind the wheel, he's a ruthless winner. He's there to win, but that doesn't mean he's a bad human being.
Touche, Chris Harris. He's given. That's the point, isn't it? The pertinent one, the overarching one. It doesn't mean he's a bad human being just because he wants to win. Surely, ladies and gentlemen, this can't be the era of F1 snowflakery. Surely, sometimes you've got to forgive and forget if Maximilian Verstappen oversteps a line or two, just as did Schumacher and Ayrton Senna before him, with a view to win a race and or a championship. People say that Lewis Hamilton, bless him, Lewis Hamilton is straight-laced, a straight, no thinking shooter of an F1 peddler, is now and always will be. But even in his prime, when he was fighting back and forth with Nico Rosberg, don't believe what I'm saying. Just go back and watch the tape. 2015 COTA. Have a look at the extent to which Sir Lewis hangs out Nico Rosberg, his former friend, out to dry, because that's what the goats do. That's what you're supposed to do. No quarter given. This is F1 Chariots of Fire, not F1 snowflakery. Surely, as F1 starts to go parabolic, that's why I show you the numbers at the start, the F1 movie, you understand its stakes and circumstances and friction. Those are the foundations, ground zero, upon which the god-tieriest sport in sports history, in the weird and wacky world that is upper echelon sport, has been built, called F1. John, you're an absolute gentleman. Excuse me, Sir John Perry. Put some respect on his name. Remarkable is the correct word, says E, so it's a bit techie. If Jos, oh my gosh, I can't read that out, Nando. Tayon de Haas, oh, the humanity. It makes me smile. Listen, when the OGs, the day zero ones come back in, Tayon, you're a legend, mate. Long time no see, by the way, Tayon. But I think that's a really good, listen, if you haven't watched already, I was going to talk about the F1 movie, but I haven't even watched it myself. If you haven't watched the Chris Harris piece, go and watch that. And shortly thereafter, go and watch Chris Harris talking about it on his podcast, Chris Harris on Cos. I will link both of those in the description, because if you like yourself, forget Maximilian Verstappen, but if you like yourself some driving of the god-tieriest variety, then you will enjoy both of those videos. Links will be in the description. Oh, and by the way, do you remember Maximilian Verstappen's a new dad? He's a bonus dad already, of course, but he's a brand new dad, or a brand new-ish dad of late. Max Verstappen said of that circumstance, because a challenge that people put forth as their principal supposition went something like this. There is not an F1 father in history who hasn't learned something about risk management, that your whole attitude towards life changes once you get that baby in your hands and look into their eyes. Max Verstappen's response was something like this: nothing will change for me. I am a simple racer. I want to do nothing else other than do my job in F1 and win races. Check this out. A brand new documentary on Oracle Red Bull Racing, where they look at Maximilian Verstappen and talk to people around him, trying to understand what makes that fella great. In there, though, there's a very personal piece where Max talks about going home to his brand new family, his growing family, plus new additions. And that even after he's had a bad day at work, a bad day at the office, excuse me, that nothing else matters when he gets home. Take a look at this.
Race or weekend, you know, when you get back home, doesn't really matter, does it? You know, you see the little girl smiling at you, and race or weekend, you know, when you get back home, doesn't really matter, does it? You know, you see the little girl smiling at you, and it's okay. You know, life goes on, and that's, at the end of the day, the most important. Race.
I don't hate that from Max. Of course, life is different when you have yourself a family. Does that mean necessarily, though, that Max is going to become a different driver? That the extent to which he manages for risk in real time, when he gets in the cockpit and laces up his 6-point harness and closes down his visor, does that mean he's going to be a different driver? Who the fudge knows? We'll see proper in earnest in real time whether that's the case when he's fighting yet again in a couple of years, hopefully when he has a car underneath him capable of winning races and therefore championships. Do me a favour, if you like the stream, then like the stream. That one hits deep. It does hit very deep, Cracker Sauce. I'm going to watch the entire documentary. I'll link that in the description as well. Sky Sports F1 keep on discrediting Max as much as they can. For instance, when Horner was dismissed, they immediately pointed the finger of culpability at Jos and Maximilian Verstappen. Brundle did, but then he walked it back, to be fair to Martin Brundle. Initially, it was that Max and Jos Stradamus had a hand, that they were responsible for Christian Horner's dismissal. But then the next week, Martin Brundle, if I recall correctly, reneged and said they would have had to rubber stamp it, that they wouldn't have been responsible necessarily, but they would have had to okay Fatherhood brings out the best in real man. Let's go, Macon. Cracker sauce. That one does hit very deep, eh? We can all see now how much Max cares about racing, as he's sincere in his way of racing. That is a trait we all admire, says Daniel. Max ahead of the parenting pace as well. Let's go. Muhammad Ali had similar, not easy try. Beat someone up in the ring, then go home and look at your baby. I know it's context, is it not? It is context, and context is key. W11 looks again. Remember pressing the light button helps. Absolutely F1. But should we talk about some Sir Lewis then? Because I've been arguing. I will set the table this way. The table of context. I've been arguing back and forth with Shez today. Shez keeps telling me, shut your mouth about Sir Lewis, Cameron. Stop being so hard. And Baxley, to be fair. Stop being so harsh on Sir Lewis. Yeah, he was great. Yeah, he might be the best one. Yeah, he might be first round Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore of F1. But give that dude some grace. 42 points adrift in the driver's standings. Whatever Shez and Baxley will say. To that, I say this. Sir Lewis, in my mind, this is who Sir Lewis is in summary, synopsis. This is what they will put on the epitaph of his career, in my humble opinion. On his day, when he had his Weetabix, there wasn't a driver in F1 history that could take the challenge that is Sir Lewis Hamilton. Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson Hamilton. And seriously, they would have to, because if they didn't, they would get beat. He was a behemoth. Do you know what I mean? Sack off the marketing stuff. We'll get to that. But just as a peddler, who else, what other rookie could have jumped into that car in 2007 alongside one Fernando El Plan Alonso and beat that dude? Fernando El Plan Alonso, by the way, who had just come off back-to-back seasons beating Michael Schumacher. Lest we forget, Michael Schumacher, 2000 to 2004, won every single championship of the drivers' variety. It would take for a fire-breathing Spaniard from Oviedo Astoria and Fernando Pan Alonso to beat him in 05 and 06. And then Lewis, in his rookie season, jumped in a McLaren and beat him. That's chaos, chat. Unheard of setting. So that's who Lewis Hamilton is, or was. At least that's who we're talking about, and that's the umbrella heading under which we need to have this conversation. So when people are saying extend him in grace, it cannot be both, in my humble opinion. Can't be the GOAT and then extend grace. Yeah, even the best ones need some time to acclimatise and get their feet underneath the table of a Scuderia Ferrari car with the yellow badge and black prancing horse atop. I get that, but this is Sir Lewis, for Pete's sake. And then at the start of the season, he was asked the question, is it not? And this, I tweeted this earlier and it went bloody viral. Lewis Hamilton stands fundamentalist, came for me in kind. Lewis Hamilton, when asked the question, you're spinning a very many plates. You've got all of your altruistic, philanthropic endeavour. Sir Lewis, will you be able to keep those plates spinning concurrently? Or will some of them have to drop so that you can focus on winning a championship? Not your 8th, but your first for Scuderia Ferrari. To that, Sir Lewis Hamilton said this: forget all that other stuff. I'm focused entirely on winning races and championships, therefore, for Ferrari. Take that one to the bank. That I record. I've got the clip somewhere in the archives. We'll play it again tomorrow. That's exactly what Sir Lewis Hamilton said. So then when I see Sir Lewis, again, these arrangements were calendarised like years before, right? Lewis is the producer of the Met Gala, whatever. So of course he's obliged to attend. But then when I see Sir Lewis at the Met Gala and him 42 points behind Charles Leclerc in the championship, and now today you see the bloody tequila thing, I'm like, hang on. Square this circle for me, chat. How can one be so focused, like Nico Rosberg levels of focus, if one's also so committed to these extracurricular, philanthropic and altruistic endeavours? Square this circle for me, please, somebody in the chat. I'm begging you. This makes no sense. I can't understand it. Now, Sir Lewis Hamilton, they always said, Toto the boy who cried wolf in particular, if you're going to get the best out of him, then you need to allow him to spread his wings. You cannot clip them, because he'll be unhappy on race day, and that's not how you get the quickest Lewis Hamilton. The way that you get the optimised iteration of Lewis is to allow him to go and do his sponsorship endeavours, to rubber stamp them, encourage them even, because then when Lewis gets to race day and quali, you have a relaxed Lewis Hamilton, his shoulders pushed back, confident, like a spring in his step. 2018 Singapore settings as an example, 17, 16, bloody 2019 and 2020, as near as makes no difference, all season young. That was Sir Lewis Hamilton. So long as he wasn't in a toxic relationship with Nicole Scherzinger, then you were always going to get the best out of him, though. That was what Toto, the boy who cried wolf, said. But now, this is different bloody circumstances, is it not? It's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change, and so changing circumstances. Lewis then was like 25 years old, 30 years old, 35, 2018 Singapore. Now, in 2025, Sir Lewis is 40 years old. Lest we forget, nobody's not going to argue with me that Formula One isn't a young man's game. LeBron James, Tom Brady, they'll say. They are the exception that proves the rule. These are young people's games and sport. Father Time is undefeated, undisputed. I don't care what anybody wants to say. Abbots of Unreason, Lewis Hamilton, Colt LH, Lewis Hamilton stands, fans, fundamentalists. I don't care. I cannot do this. I cannot avert my gaze from objectivity and truth. I will sacrifice none of the aforementioned at the altar of partisanship or any other cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker Sir John Perry. Too kind as always. Regardless of who Lewis is today as a driver, I have the utmost respect for how he got to F1 and what he did. Well, that 1000%, John. 1000%, chap. You take the words out of my mouth. Is worthy of praise. It's one of the greatest stories, one of the greatest come to success stories ever told in sports. They should. It's a travesty of justice that there isn't already an F1 movie specifically about Sir Lewis, an autobiography. There is no story like that in Formula One. Maybe Cassius Clay, come Muhammad Ali. I don't know. That's probably more stake filled. I don't know, more storied. But I mean, they're 1A and 1B, are they not? He's overcome ridiculous circumstances to get where he is. However, Sir John, TMM, this is where it gets techie. Because I desperately, more than most, listen, Sir Lewis Hamilton fans will tell me that I'm not a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan because I don't worship at the altar of Sir Lewis in the same way they do. All I want to do is see Sir Lewis win races and therefore championship. I know at the age of 40 it grows more improbable by the day. He sat there alongside a Charles Leclerc who is a fire-breathing dragon, point to point, maybe the quickest on the grid. Modern day Gilles Villeneuve, sack off modern day Jean Alesi. That's how bloody quick the Monegasque is. And that Lewis is sat alongside him, the odds grow more improbable now. But yet and still, I would just love to see Sir Lewis optimise for what I feel are his not insubstantial odds of winning races and therefore championships. But these diminish by the day. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Lewis Hamilton put out a cheeky cryptic tweet and it said 808 full stop 08, alluding to the 8th day of the 8th month 2025, that something was going to happen. Now, on the back of the chaotic circumstance that was the Hungarian Grand Prix, many people speculated that it could only be one thing. Lewis Hamilton was the one who told us maybe Scuderia Ferrari, in the heat of the moment, I'll have you know, but maybe Scuderia Ferrari need to change their driver. Every time, he said, every time, disappointed with his not insubstantial underperformance versus budget and forecast. When asked about the question, he said, listen, maybe it's just not good enough. I've not been good enough yet again. It can't be the car because Charles this time has dropped it on pole. I'm struggling to control the car, notwithstanding the fact that I've got more downforce on at the rear as far as my rear wing, and I'm still struggling to control for a ground effect car, a type of car in this rule and reg set that Lewis Hamilton has never gelled with. Maybe they need to replace the driver. Lewis Hamilton's words and not mine. In response to which the F1 community went mad. Maybe Lewis is going to retire. Maybe he just sacks it off. Maybe that's the best thing for Sir Lewis. I mean, he's got nothing else to prove. What else do you expect him to give to Formula One? He's given all his bloody life, for Pete's sake. Even from the age of like 6, 7 and 8. Like, he's been racing all his life. Even back to the days of Rye House. So what else, Marie, Issa, James, Neil, Daniel, has he got to prove? Therefore, nothing is the truth. But I, as a racing diehard purist, grey-bearded F1 veteran, I just want to see Lewis concentrate on Formula One, double down now. Remember I said earlier that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change. Change, therefore, I don't think Lewis Hamilton at the ripe old age of 40, lest we forget there have only been 3 40-year-old drivers champions in history. 57 was Fangio, 1950 was Farina, and 1966 was Jack Brabham. 3. And they happened 1,000 gazillion years ago. F1 now, more than ever, is a young man's game. They're 18 for Pete's sake in Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman. Young. See Kimi Antonelli coming out of 6th form for Pete's sake, having just finished his exams. What are we doing? It's never been a younger man or woman sport than it is now. And herein lies the point. Surely then, I put forth the following supposition. Surely, if Lewis is going to optimise for his chances, then he needs to Nico Rosberg up. He said already that he's not engaging in any long-term serious relationships because he doesn't want to retire from F1 thinking that he hasn't given his all. So then how today am I seeing this advert, this tequila advert? I thought Sir Lewis Hamilton was focusing only on his F1 career. Let's have a look at the advert very quickly. His tequila brand, non-alcoholic by the way, and then we'll talk about it. Tequila. I don't know how to pronounce that word, and I don't know anything about the tequila. I won't be drinking it anytime soon. I don't drink tequila. I'm not about to drink non-alcoholic tequila. Is it worthy of mention, however, that a person of colour, the first and only to date person of colour F1 driver, is now not a businessman but a business man? Abso-flipping-lutely, you bet your bottom dollar it's more than worthy of mention. It's a seminal moment. Lewis Hamilton is a $1 billion brand, for Pete's sake, a marketing behemoth, and especially now paired with Scuderia Ferrari, the red car and the yellow badge and the black prancing Corsa top. That is gangbuster. You can't argue with a straight face that that a rising Lewis Hamilton marketing tide doesn't float all F1 boats. You have to. It does, but yet and still there is the soft, vulnerable underbelly now about which we have to talk as far as his performance. You talk about the speed. Shez corrected me yesterday and he said, or even today, that he's been catching Charles Leclerc in qualifying, notwithstanding the annus horribilis that was the Hungarian Grand Prix. But yet and still, chat, he's 42 points behind his teammate. I'll summarise this way. Chat, as we round third base, I'm not sure that I'm interested in. I don't want to see Lewis do anything else. I don't want to see him do anything else. Baxter came at me and he was like, well, when George and Sainz go to Wimbledon, nobody says anything. When Lewis Hamilton indulges in an extracurricular activity, everybody's like he needs to get in the simulator. You know why? Because he's Lewis Hamilton, for Pete's sake, 7-time champion, Mount Rushmore of F1, first round Hall of Fame. This is a difference in extents and not kinds. How very dare you, Sir Baxter, mention Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon and George Russell in the same sentence as Sir Lewis Hamilton, for they are different. Their achievements, the frequency and extent of their accolades are different. You shouldn't even include them in the same sentence. And that's why when I look at Sir Lewis and desperately want that dude to win more races and more championships, I've got to judge it with that, with a very strong stick now, with a very discerning eye, because I've seen Lewis Hamilton around Maggots and Beckett's, 3 Deep, Pizzioni and Nelson Piquet do borderline impossible things, black swan events per se, could barely conceive them possible, let alone see somebody go and execute them on track. That's who Lewis Hamilton was then, and that's who I desperately, however implausible and unfeasible it is, want Sir Lewis to be again now, and I'm not sure he can, whilst he's spinning so many extracurricular plates. So John, you're a legend. Lewis Hamilton, not mad. Get your money, man. Let's just leave racing to the younger and hunger. I don't hate it, John. I just desperately wish, having seen the likes of Nico Rosberg overturn a not insubstantial, as far as his extent, natural talent deficit to one Sir Lewis Hamilton in 2015. I think Lewis Hamilton can do it again. I'm convinced. but he just needs to go to the Shaolin Temple, right? He needs to back off all his hair and become, like friend of the channel Peter Windsor says, just Lewis Hamilton, a Rye House Lewis Hamilton, a young, hungry, not so young, but a hungry F1 driver, bereft, devoid of distraction. I think that's the only way. And even if Lewis does that, maybe he doesn't win another championship or even another race. We've been talking about this since 2021, that the Overton window, as far as opportunity in F1, is fleeting. Sometimes not even the most discerning of eyes can see it open and shut. And this might be what happens to Sir Lewis, but we won't know, chat, unless he hunkers down, goes to the Shaolin Temple, backs off his hair, euphemistically speaking, and just becomes a racing driver without time, like he says, to develop relationships, not with the opposite sex at the very least, sacks it all off, goes to the Shaolin Temple and becomes nothing but for a racing driver. Now, of course, he's going to have his extracurricular activities, but insofar as they impinge on his ability to win races, develop a car, an SF26 that speaks to his strengths as a racing driver, I'm not sure that I can rubber stamp those. I don't want to see Lewis at the Met Gala. I don't want to see him doing anything else other than getting his Nico Rosberg on and focusing on being a racing driver, because I love Lewis and want to see him win. I'm not sure it's possible unless he does all of the aforementioned. It's going to get techier than techie things, chat. As we round third, thank you so much. I need to go bald again, Issa. Can you imagine? I was looking back at the Jakeys. Let me tell you this, Issa. You've mentioned, as a man over 50, there are many things I see where I go, not doing that ish. Age, father time is undefeated, undisputed. Sir John, come on, gents, no need for chat PvP. Let me tell you this. When I watch Sir Lewis Hamilton, like there are a couple of clips that I always watch of Sir Lewis, like just for nostalgia settings, right? Just to remember, just to indulge who Sir Lewis Hamilton is and was, particularly was, double underlined. Singapore 2018, God tier lap. We know what Max Verstappen was trying to do that day and nearly could have done, but for reliability issues. But that's a footnote ultimately. And I also watched the Top Gear episodes. Rye House Sir Lewis, for Pete's sake, balding and all. I've got a lot of time for that dude, and not least of which the bloody the centerpiece that Clarkson did, where Lewis Hamilton jumps in Senna's MP44 McLaren. I just want him to be that guy again, and maybe that horse has bolted and the Pandora's stardom box has opened, never to be closed again. And maybe listen, we all grow, we all develop, and we all change over time, right? Muhammad Ali said, if you're the same at 40 that you were at 20 years old, you've lived and wasted 20 years of your life. And Lewis Hamilton will say that he's different, and he should be different, but maybe I don't want him to be, at least not as far as his ability to be an F1 driver and win races and therefore championships. So you're an absolute legend. Too kind as always. Guys, we go again. 10 a.m. tomorrow, as always. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions. Your Honour.